I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Raton City Commission. Sorry, Michael Ann, I thought you were still there.
I was putting the closed session sign on the door.
Okay. Could we have roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Sagata.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster.
Present.
Commissioner Chatterley.
Present.
Commissioner Chavez.
Present.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Present. Thank you. Could y'all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight that's here. Next regular commission meeting will be Tuesday, December 11th. As far as we know, that will be our only meeting in December, correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Christmas break. That'll be 6 p.m. here in the commission quarters. We do have one proclamation that I'd like to read, and it's the American Diabetes Month, November 2018. Whereas in the United States, more than 30 million people, including 241,000 in New Mexico, have diabetes, a serious disease with potentially life-threatening complications, including heart disease, stroke, blindness, kidney disease, and amputation. And whereas an additional 84 million people in the United States are at risk of developing type 2 diabetes, and whereas approximately every 21 seconds, someone in the United States is diagnosed with diabetes, and whereas an increase in community awareness is necessary to put a stop to the diabetes epidemic, let it therefore be resolved that I, James Neal Sagata Jr., Mayor of the City of Raton, New Mexico, do hereby proclaim the month of November 2018 as American Diabetes Awareness Month. I encourage all citizens to recognize American Diabetes Month and be part of the American Diabetes Association's movement to confront, fight, and most importantly, change the future of this deadly disease. Witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and seal and caused the seal of the City of Raton to be fixed this 27th day of November 2018. This was just sent to us by the state organization and asked that we proclaim November as Diabetes Month. And go from there. All right, at this time we will take comments from the general public. Anyone wishing to address the commission at this time may do so. Seeing none, we will move forward with committee reports from commissioners. Commissioner Chatterley.
All right, the first thing I'd like to report on is
do that under my
I did attend the third and final round of the Municipal Officers Leadership Institute, which we call MOLLE, in Santa Fe, November 7th through 9th. I was able to network with about 40 other municipal officials from around the state. We attended workshops on the Open Meetings Act, safety in the workplace, maintaining public trust, responsible communication, servant leadership, using social media in government, legal concerns for municipalities, and a presentation on the Stop the Bleed awareness campaign, and that was really interesting. There is a new movement called Stop the Bleed, which is encouraging people due to shooter incidents or natural disasters or whatnot, to encourage the citizens to learn how to just simply, it's basically stopping bleeding and saving lives. So kind of a little triage work, and it's meant to be, anyone can kind of teach it, so if that's something we ever want to bring to the city, we can do that. They also, you can purchase kits that would go next to your AEDs that would kind of have basically just supplies to stop bleeding, not like first aid, but just gauzes and bandages and compression, and just very simple stuff to use.
Cool.
I'm happy to report that in addition to the 3 MOLLE trainings that I attended this year, I've also completed and had approved all the electives required for my certified municipal official designation. So I'm submitting my paperwork for that now, but I won't be able to technically graduate with the plaque, I guess, until the annual conference. But I do have that designation as soon as that's approved.
Cool.
Moving on, the branding team. We've been very, very busy with the launch of the brand. There's been constant communication through email, text, and phone calls, in addition to meetings on October 26th, November 2nd, and November 16th, both at the Old Pass Gallery and the Center for Innovative Community. And I also visited KRTN a few times before the brand launch at the Festival of Lights to promote this, and passed out swag to about 35 community partners and leaders. We officially launched the brand on November 23rd at the Festival of Lights. And I do want to thank our Public Works guys who did an awesome job on the float for the city. It looked fantastic. People loved it. They were asking us the history of the circus wagon, which I need to find out because I didn't have a lot of information there. I'd also like to thank Desiree. She came as an elf and helped us pass out all the swag bags, which was awesome. Also, I'd like to thank my family for becoming my little workshop at home. I have my dining room back, but we did bag all these 400 swag bags of stuff. And they also helped man the table. We did pass out, like I said, around 400 bags total with the Raton Your Pass slogan and the new logo. There were ornaments, front plates, pins, lip balms, and stickers along with wrap cards that explain kind of the branding process a little bit and how the logo reflects the brand essence. The festival did have a great turnout. I met at least 4 new families that had just moved to Raton, which was very exciting. Lots of positive and excited feedback about the brand and the logo. And we do have our banner up over there. We kind of officially had people sign the banner. We probably could have had 2 or 3 of them with the number of people, but that's how many signatures, and we filled the whole banner just in probably an hour and a half of people wandering by. So the branding team has also been working with Raton Moon on new billboards, which should be up soon. Moving forward, we are hoping next to capture photography of local places to use on the billboards and in advertising that reflect the brand. So we're really, sometimes you have to start with stock photos with things, but for now, but we want to move on to local stuff. Jessica Barfield is finalizing the rebranding of ExploreRaton.com, and that should be going live very soon. We're also planning to put a blurb in the utility bill directing people to the new branded website and kind of get the word out that way. We have about 500 to 600 wrap cards left over that we're going to put around in the community to help explain that process to our local folks and hopefully gain their more support. We have window clings left over that we kept, and we'd like to get those into all the businesses in Raton that have a storefront, just so we have that look going on. This week we have another meeting with Raton Moon on Thursday, and we're going to work on setting up access to the branded elements for our partners and guidelines and best practices for the brand use. We're also going to be meeting with Robin Beaubien from New Mexico Main Street to create a marketing plan, and that will be kind of the final part of her partnership and New Mexico Main Street's partnership in the process. We'd like to include in that, as we've talked as a commission, of branded monument signage, possibly wayfinding, and materials that go out to tourists and those interested in relocation. I was invited to present on December 11th at the county commission meeting, and so I will be attending that to kind of explain the process we've gone through. And then the branding team is seeking official adoption of the new brand and seal by the city commission at a future meeting. And I may rope you guys into something. I would love for us to do a radio ad together with the brand, and so I have some creative ideas I'm coming up with, and maybe you guys would all put your voices in, because I think that could be something that would get some support from the community, and you can talk about what Raton is your past to. So that's kind of where we're going with that. If you guys are interested.
Cool.
And like I said, our next meeting is coming up this Thursday. The Raton Beautification Coalition. Thanks to Lori Bunker, she discovered the You Are Beautiful campaign, and she obtained free signage for Raton that's going to be put up in the historic First Street area. So this campaign, I had to look it up because I hadn't heard of it, but it's a worldwide trend really, and it's gone as far as Antarctica. They started with stickers and things. It's a public art campaign focused on the simple message, you are beautiful, and it started in Chicago. So what they've done is they've put up murals and signage and whatnot in different places with this really positive message. And they say on their website, when the phrase "you are beautiful" is integrated into a city or community, it creates an immediate positive dialogue. Often due to the upbeat and universal message, our installations quickly generate human interest stories online, in print or on TV. The message is a daily reminder. It's designed to build each other up and spread positivity every day. So especially in Chicago, where there was a lot of different advertising, and some of it, the founder said it kind of made you feel little down sometimes getting bombarded. He started with this campaign, he's an artist, of putting up these signs. So this will actually be the first You Are Beautiful sign in New Mexico, and that's why we got it for free, so that's really exciting. And then through the Center for Innovative Community, we're going to be having a social media campaign that will promote the You Are Beautiful signage as a tourist destination and lead people downtown. And I guess it's a big thing to travel and take selfies with this signage, so that's kind of exciting. The Beautification Coalition, again with Ms. Bunker, is also heading up the holiday lighting contest, and that's something that she's been working on. It's for businesses and residents. Nominations are going to be taken through Christmas Eve on Facebook. If you just get on there and type the @ symbol, Raton Beautiful, @Raton Beautiful, that'll take you to that Facebook page where you can nominate people, and then they'll be voting from Christmas Day to New Year's Eve, and winners will be announced on New Year's Day, and there are some prizes for that. And the Summer of Color benefit concert for the flower baskets is going to be February 16th at the Schuler. We have confirmed that our local talented teenager, Zoe Elliott, will open the show. You may have seen her as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And she'll be followed by Michael DeLala from Longmont, Colorado, and headliner Jackie Gibson from Trinidad. All of this is going to be acoustic guitar, and tickets will be $10 at the door. A couple other small things. I did attend the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board meeting on November 15th. I really don't have anything to report besides what's in our packet for tonight. And then the Senior Center, I was not able to attend, so, and that's the, I'm sure the mayor may have something to add there, but that's what I have.
We might be able to cover that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Giacomo.
Raton Public Service Company monthly meeting was held on October 24, 2018, 5:30 p.m. Office Manager, Bookkeeper Jessica Gonzalez presented the financial and statistical information of the board, which was all approved. RPS General Manager Sandy Chavez reported that the request for proposals for the advanced metering infrastructure AMI was released on August 23rd, 2018, with a deadline for submission to be October 4th, 2018. Mrs. Chavez reported that RPS received notice that the ICDR will proceed with administrating of the arbitrator selection knowledge as the arbitrator selection acknowledging Wasil's notice to appeal that their denial for the injunction. RPS will be receiving a letter detailing the next step concerning arbitration selection process. Ms. Chavez reported that she sent out letters to the Twin Eagle requesting a face-to-face meeting October 23rd or the 25th, and has not received a reply as of yet. Assistant General Manager Dave Pancino reported that there was no run time for Unit 4 this month. He does want to start running the unit 8 hours per month to start collecting more data. Mr. Pancino also stated that the line crew was working on the conversion line from the Travel Lodge, Travel Motel on Cedar Street to the Grand Street East and east to East 4th Street. The line crew should be able to complete the conversions to Legion Park by the end of this month, as well as the Hoxie line. Mr. Pancino also stated that he would like to do an assessment on the Burro Canyon line this fall. That's all I have for RPS. Report on library. Arthur Johnson Memorial Library Advisory Board met on November 13th, 2018, 5:30 p.m. After years of conducting a Raton Science Cafe, the last program was held in September. Mr. and Mrs. R.B. Minton are in the process of moving to Ole Springs, Colorado. We certainly extend our appreciation for their service to this community through the use of this Raton Science Cafe. It was ran entirely by Mr. Minton, enjoying those interested in the library for the programs. The library also held two class tours in October. There was one for the 3rd grade students on October 9th, during which the teacher, Ambrose, Ambrosita Cintas allowed each student to select 2 books to be checked out on her name. Also on October 22nd, 18 special education students of different ages were given a tour as well. Statistical report for the month of September 2018, the grant circulation totaled 4,060 items checked out. Monies collected was $1,007.80. Donations were 0. Fines were collected were $200.35. Copies made were totaled $807.45. Memorials were 0. Programs held in the library in September were 13, attended by 188 persons. Story hours held in the library were 4, attended by 48 persons. The statistical report for the month of October, grant circulation was 4,644 items. Monies collected was $724.35. Donations were 0. Fines were $171.10. Copies made were $553.25. Memorials were 0. Programs held in the library were 11, attended by 102 persons. Story hours held in the library were 5, attended by 46. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Chavez.
The Financial Advisory Board met yesterday on the 26th and approved the financials for presenting to the Commission tonight. We had a Water Board meeting, and I defer to Mayor Pro Tem. Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem.
For the Water Board.
Then back to you for
And I'm done.
Okay. Well, the Water Board, we had a special meeting on November 2nd, which was regarding the filter plant and renovations and filter plant improvements. We also had a phone conference regarding nutrient temporary standards and of surface water quality with the Surface Water Quality Bureau of New Mexico Environmental Department, and that was on November 6th, and then the regular meeting was November 20th. And briefly, we had we are on 90% Cimarron at this point. Lake Malloy is 6 feet down, but it is not in any danger. And actually, I'm going to defer to Mr. Campbell to finish up if there are other details that need to be brought up since he's here.
Mayor, Commissioners, there was a report on the Brilliant Heart Waterline Project, which as it stands right now, all the water main is installed. We're in the process of finishing chlorination and bacteria testing on that line, and then they'll start doing the services and interconnecting that. The filter plant improvement project notice of award was issued. We're trying to complete the last of federal documentation with a goal by the end of this year having the notice to proceed with a January 1st, 2019 start date for the contractor to be working on that project. We did discuss operating on the Cimarron system because as long as ice will let us, we'll continue to try to pull the majority of Raton's water from that source. As we brought up, if the lake is 6 foot down, it has come about 6 inches. We'll try to stay off of that as much as possible. We do have a little bit of snowpack in there. We'll continue to see what this winter brings. And the last item was the Lake Maloya Service Spillway Project, and the wastewater nutrient removal requirements were discussed. As those will be ongoing issues as we move forward.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then moving on, the Center for Community Innovation, which is previously known as the Center for Sustainability. They found that that name was not conducive to getting good grants, so they are changing the name, which is still a DBA for the Northeast New Mexico Educational Foundation. So, but they will proceed as the Center for Community Innovation. They are working with TSJC regarding workforce training. They have HiSET, which is, they will soon ready to start being a testing site. So if you need to take your MCATs or GREs or SATs, those type of testing. They would be able to provide that testing. They're about to roll out a new version of the Explore Raton website, as Commissioner Chatterley already mentioned. That's coming up very soon. New Vista volunteer Kim Davis is working on the Cole Camp community kitchen, and actually it's just the Cole Camp kitchen. They're looking for a ribbon cutting early in February for that to be open and fully functional. And they are also working with the Growing Great Kids projects, which is in conjunction with the Rotary Club, to roll out the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library process. If you have children under the age of 5, you can get free books in the mail through this Dolly Parton Imagination Library project. I think it was November 2nd, we met with the Chamber of Commerce to discuss their new MOU. That is still in process. They had a regular meeting on November 5th, which they're working on reconstructing their management of the visitor center so that they can provide the best services possible to tourists who come through there. As I don't have numbers on tourists up to this date, but they do have, anywhere from 5 to 75 tourists in a day, so they're pretty busy with tourists. November 20th was the Housing Authority. Colleen has been training, and she's been studying and training to take on the executive director, not to take on the position, but she passed the test. Would be able to and be a stand backup for Mr. Terry Baca, who is not right now retiring, but hopes to someday. The auditor came and began their field work with the Housing Authority on November 7th and 8th to do their field work. They have ongoing repairs of roofing, replacing doors, and bathroom repairs. And then my last little thing is I helped Commissioner Chatterley just a little tiny bit. She worked really hard. I worked a little tiny bit on helping pass out those swag bags. Scott and I were able to meet with Bo, what's his last name?
Beams,
CEO of MCMC, and we got him a bag, and then a couple other key players at MCMC. We also got one to Paula Cacciatore with Independent Writers, Chamber of Commerce, Dee Burks, and Rotary Club President Tim Sexton.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, as far as my committee reports, we'll do the Senior Center report. We held our meeting in Cimarron this past month, and it was last week. The board is elected to go, instead of monthly meetings, to every other month, and they would like to meet at the different centers throughout the county so they can meet the seniors in the other areas and staff and all of that. So Cimarron was our first stop. We received 2/3 of our federal funding finally for food. We're hoping that the remainder will be distributed in the early part of 2019. That was about $42,000. Normally we get between $64,000 and $70,000 strictly for food. Reported that Tim Armour is no longer the director at North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. Mr. Tomas Garcia was named in the interim. We had a review of our audit report with the CPA via telephone conference. We received an unmodified report, so we're doing well there. And he noted several improvements in the program and commended us on that, in which turn I commended our financial staff. They've done a great job. As part of the recent election, the bond issue that passed, I believe it was Bond A, there was $10.3 million in capital outlay for the centers throughout the state. We got 2 awards out of that. One was $120,000 for renovations to the Cimarron Center, which will be their kitchen. We need to seriously enlarge it and get some we're gonna use a lot of that for walk-in freezer and cooler, and it'll free up some space in that. So we got the $120,000 for that, and we also received $40,000 to replace a vehicle here in Raton. Thinking about possibly seeking legislative monies for food transportation vehicles this year. Since ALTSD, their process is very limited and you don't get any money very easily there. We are in some need of some food transportation vehicles, and we're going to possibly seek other alternatives there. We also received the final review of the AAA assessment. All issues that were found during their inspection have been addressed and corrected, and we received a letter yesterday saying we are in good standing with AAA. Coming up this Friday, I know I haven't met yet, but I'll just give you guys a heads up. It is the joint meeting with the New Mexico Municipal League and the New Mexico counties, and just this is where we get together and we get our legislative priorities in line and try to work to support each other. On the county side, they're looking for support with the HB2 appropriations, behavioral health, tax reform, fire protection fund, and the Forfeiture Act reform. They would like to see some changes in that. On the municipal side, how we ranked our priorities, we'd like to see state and local tax reform, taxation of internet sales to be available for local communities to collect on that, funding of streets, roads, and bridges, and then the big one for us this year looks like it's going to be next to the taxes is the enhancing the safety in public schools and getting some of those things taken care of to where retired officers can go to work as security, and also getting, if you carry a weapon onto school grounds, it would now be a felony instead of a misdemeanor. So those are the things we got. Other than that, that's it. I'd also like to acknowledge Commissioner Chatterley for their work on the branding. I want to commend Brenda and them for their work with the Festival of Lights. It was a great show. It was a lot of fun being out there. It was a little cool, but it was a lot of fun. And thanks to everybody, the city and all.
I'd also like to acknowledge the good Thanksgiving dinner we had at the
Spark,
at
with
the
Spark.
Smart.
That was very
That was
tasty.
nice. I missed
Yeah.
All righty. I believe that's all the committee reports. Anybody miss out anything? Good to go? All right. Moving into item 7A, approval of the November 13th, 2018 regular commission meeting minutes. Have them in your packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them.
I'll make a motion to approve the November 13th, 2018 regular commission meeting minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as stated. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item B, deliberate and act on lodger's tax recommendations, LMNOC, radio advertising. Mr. Berry?
Mayor and Commission, you have in your packet for consideration a recommendation from the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board. This is from their meeting held on November 15th, 2018, and I'll read what you have in your memo. The following is the board's recommendation. The Lodgers Tax Board is recommending to the City Commission that $8,000 be awarded to LMNOC radio station for advertising, with the condition that they coordinate this effort with Jessica Barfield and the Center for Sustainable Community for radio advertisements, which we noted that the name changed of the center, but the coordination along the lines of the media management proposal that you had heard earlier.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment there. According to the grant that the center does have, there needs to be at least a $5,000 commitment with LMNOC in order to fulfill that grant, but there will be a $2,500 match that will be coming back.
Okay. Any other questions for either Mr. Berry or Ms. Chatterley if she was at the meeting?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, public comment and discussion on 2019 legislative capital outlay priorities. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I have prepared a memorandum for you which discusses potential direction to go for request of capital outlay projects. And I've asked for you to consider this. Certainly, as we've stated, input of the public is important in this matter. Now, I would point out that the request for capital outlays really strongly correlates to the infrastructure capital improvement plan that the Commission had worked on in late summer, and we had submitted to the state in September. So we would like to request funding for capital outlay on projects which we identified as being a priority in the ICIP. And so I've included some of that ICIP information in your packet so we can reflect back on the work that we did then. So I think generally we've stated in the time that I've been here, the 4 years, that street improvements are also always a high priority in Raton, and I think this is true of really most communities. They're always working on streets. We could really look at just about any street in town, and even streets that we worked on recently probably need some level of maintenance. Some of the streets that we have in town really need major reconstruction. So if we look at our needs and then we look at our available resources to do the street improvements that we want to do, of course the needs greatly outweigh the funding that's available to us to complete those street improvements. So we try to leverage what funds we have with other funds. We'll talk about that in a couple of places tonight, but in the memorandum I've pointed out to you that a project I would bring to your attention. We really have not talked about this specific project very much before, but we have followed a pattern of improving our avenues in the downtown area, the places where a lot of our downtown businesses exist, a lot of visitors to town come, and citizens of town use on a daily basis. I've identified 3 blocks that I'd like to bring to your attention for improvement. That would include 2 blocks of Park Avenue. That would be between 1st Street and 3rd Street. That would include the block in front of the post office. Those are asphalt surface streets, and the proposal there would be some drainage improvement, some improvement to curb and gutter sidewalk, and then similar to what we did on Hospital Drive, milling that pavement and providing a new overlay, fixing that surface. And then we would also include 1 block of Cook Avenue that would be between 2nd Street and 3rd Street to throw in that. And my recommendation is that we request $400,000 for that project to continue our progress on these downtown streets. We've done quite a bit of that work with priority avenues, but these are maybe some of our highest priority blocks that we would want to do in the downtown area. And Mayor and Commission, if it's okay, I'll kind of briefly go down the list of my recommendations to you with a brief explanation. I would qualify this by saying I'm bringing this memo to you to open this up to discussion, prompt some input from the public, get the commissioners to discuss this, and then we anticipate that at a future meeting you all will take action by way of a vote of the commission of what you would like to request, and then subsequently we will put those requests into legislative services in advance of the legislative session. So in the memo we talked about the legislative session. We noted that the state's budget, because of energy issues in the state, is fairly high currently. The news reports we've seen is the state is expecting actually about $2 billion in excess of the revenues that they had budgeted for and projected. So that we think that some capital outlay would be funded, and certainly we want to request capital outlay if there's capital outlay to be had. So going down the list, I pointed out to you that we would like to ask for funding for equipment replacement with the police department. One aspect of that we're looking at is replacing all of the laptop computers in our police units. These are the mobile units, the tough books that every officer would rely on throughout his shift, or everything that we do. We have to have those in every unit, and this is an important tool to the field officer. What we're doing right now is really obsolete equipment, and we would estimate from $60,000 to $75,000 to replace all the tough books and meet our need there. Now, while I'm at it, I'll let you know that we have worked on a review of our IT systems here, and we will be coming back to the commission with ideas to upgrade more of our hardware and our software as we go along, but I would point out this is probably our #1 priority right now is the police systems. We have worked on our server in the police department. We've worked on 911 equipment. We're not in bad shape on that, but these mobile units is where we need that. With the amount that I have brought forward to you, $200,000, we would replace 3 additional police units with new equipment. And in addition, we would like to begin a project that we've talked about here for a little while. That would be video systems that the police department can use, that we can place at key areas. It's just a good enforcement tool for a department that struggles with the manpower issue. We're going to continue to struggle to put officers out there. I think every police department, large and small, struggles to staff their department. So with video equipment, you're using technology to cover some of that manpower issue that we have. So that would be included in that request. I've listed storm drainage rehabilitation and recommended a capital outlay request of $300,000. What we would propose under this is continue rehabilitation of our stormwater system that's in the original town site on avenues. You'll remember a couple of years ago we worked on a project on Cook Avenue and Park Avenue where we had flooding problems around 2nd Street, some of our businesses there, and we successfully completed that project, and it went a long way to really helping alleviate that flooding problem that we had on those avenues. We would look at continuing that rehabilitation project on Savage Avenue, Clark Avenue, Rio Grande, and Apache throughout our original town site area where we have a storm water system that dates back to the 1930s. So that's a request there. We were fortunate enough to be funded with Public Works equipment replacement from last year's legislature. We have already expended that funds. We reported to you that we bought a brand new loader and an asphalt recycling machine. Those 2 pieces of equipment are in the field. They're being put to use currently, and we got that done between legislative sessions, which is extremely challenging to do, but we have closed out that capital outlay, and we would suggest that if additional Public Works equipment was replaced, what we need is a backhoe, we need a dump truck, we need to replace some of our mowing equipment, we need cinder spreaders, and an asphalt hot box. So a hot box would allow us to go to the hot mix plant and pick up hot mix and take it to an area that we were using it, and it would probably be on areas like utility trenches where we need a bigger volume of material. And we could use this in conjunction with our asphalt recycler as well. When we're talking about asphalt recycling, we've pointed out that we have large pile of millings that came from I-25 on or Hereford Yard, city property. I would ask for $500,000 to recycle these. And what would happen under this request is we would process those millings. That would consist of crushing and classification of the millings. And then we would rejuvenate those millings by running those through a pug mill. That's a cold process where we add new asphalt, new liquid asphalt to the mix. And then we would place that on resurfacing of city streets. So we have probably 10 or 15 miles of streets that would be a good candidate for this type of repair. It's not useful on all city streets, but we do have quite a few where this could make a major contribution to the quality of Raton streets. So we would like to start that project this year. We would like to continue to use that method annually, similar to our annual chip seal project, and start resurfacing some of our target streets with that request. And then lastly, and not to get greedy, but we have 6 recommendations to you here we can talk about. I would propose to you that you ask the legislature to bring some money to a capital project that we had budgeted for earlier. That's the construction of our hangar at the airport to try to enhance our flight school and develop the use of our airport for economic development activities. The commission had budgeted $250,000 in this year's budget for that construction. We have a grant agreement with state aviation for an additional $250,000 to bring that project to $500,000. I think that the logic here is that we have seen a significant reduction in revenues coming from New Mexico tax and rev, and the state budget is very rosy. So we would ask them to leave this money in our general fund and help us fund our portion of this project, which is, again, important to our economic development. These are my recommendations to the commission. We would like to set up a formal action at the December 11th meeting. We would ask the public to give us their input with the reminder that the ICIP is important in this process, and certainly any thoughts of the commission at this juncture, and I would be available for any questions that you have.
Any questions for Mr. Berry? Not here.
Sounds great.
What was the total that was getting there, Scott? Did you have that? 1.8?
That is an excellent question, Mayor.
Yeah, about 1.8.
1.85.
Yeah, it's $1.85 million.
Can't round it up to 2?
We can, Commissioner.
We can. I could do that real easy with 2 hotshot trucks.
There you go.
All righty, any other questions for Mr. Barrett? Okay, moving on. Item D, discussion on election code changes and options for municipal elections. Mr. Barrett.
Mayor and Commission, I'm going to give you kind of a general broad brush discussion of this, and then for specific information, I'm going to call on our city clerk so that we get everything right. But we do want to initiate a discussion with the commission. There could be action required by the commission at a fairly quick date regarding this issue, and it's related to legislation that was recently passed that dealt with local elections. And what the state legislature had looked at is there is an election in November for federal and state offices generally, and then at different times of the year there can be an election for school board. Municipal elections are typically held in March, and then there can be other elections during the year for other public or quasi-public entities. So members of the legislature had dealt with this over a couple of sessions. Legislation was approved, and the general thought is that all of these elections can be combined into one election. They noted the cost of conducting an election, fairly expensive. Even if you have a single issue on the ballot, it can be fairly expensive to conduct an election. And so the rationale is that school board elections, special hospital districts, irrigation districts, all of those can go on the same ballot. Now, there was some discussion from some of these local entities that would create a pretty large ballot, a complicated ballot. There could be numerous tax issues or bond issues on the ballot, and a lot of information for the typical voter to absorb. So after several sessions of talking about this, we do have the final legislation. And how that reads is that all local entities will have their election on the November ballot, along with federal and state elections, with the exception of municipalities who have the option of opting into a November election. If you do nothing, if you take no action, then the municipal election would remain on that March schedule. And in the case of Raton, we would have a municipal election in March of 2020. Now, you have some options. It would require action, as I understand, for Raton to opt into the November election. And again, I'm going to turn this over to our city clerk to talk about specifics of this. But you have a couple of options if you would like to think about opting into the November election. So, Michael Ann, is this a good time to
Sure.
pass this to you?
So we did provide you some information in your packet. So with regards to the decisions that we would need to make at the next meeting, and we're hoping to get a little bit of feedback this evening so that we kind of know what direction the commission is wanting us to take, because one of them, if we choose to remain with the March 2020 election, we would still need to pass a resolution, and that way we would be notifying the Secretary of State's office as to our intent to continue running our own election. Now, if we choose to opt in and turn over the administration of our elections to the county clerk, we would need to adopt an ordinance. And so at the next meeting on December 11th, we would introduce that ordinance. Then I would do a legal notice just to notify the public that we would be having the final hearing and consideration probably at the first meeting in January. And then by January 30th, we would need to provide a copy of that to the Secretary of State's office so that they would know that our intent is to opt in. Now, one of the decisions that would have to be made if we're going to opt in, it does impact the commissioner's terms. So the decision would have to be made whether or not we're going to shorten the length of the term or lengthen that. So I do have some information here that they provided. So the commissioners whose terms would expire in March of 2020, if we were to opt in but choose to shorten your term, you would remain in office through December 31st of 2019, and our election would be held in November of 2019. So that's just a year from now. Now, if we were to, now the commissioners whose terms expire in March of 2022 would be in office until December 31st of 2021. So this would in essence shorten your terms by 3 months. Now, if we look at lengthening those terms, the election would be held in November of 2021. So the commissioners who currently are serving until March of 2020 would remain in office for an additional 21 months, and your term would run through December 31st of 2021. Those of you that expire in March of 2022, you would remain in office till December 31st of 2023, and that election would be held So So I know it is a little complicated. They have provided us some comprehensive handouts and some information that goes into great detail on all of this. I think, like I said, if we decide to opt in, there's specific language that we would need to include in the ordinance. So we are looking for feedback from the commission on that. Also, I was just kind of jotting down some of the pros and cons. I've also talked to some other municipal clerks. I did talk to the county clerk yesterday, and so it is looking like all of the communities within Colfax County will probably be opting in. Now, it is a huge cost savings to them, especially the smaller communities, but it is also a cost savings to us as well. So there's a formula that we would have to calculate what our annual assessment would be, and it's based on your general fund expenditures. And so I calculated for the city of Raton, our annual assessment would be $1,250. So it'd be about $2,500 every 2 years. Currently, every other year, we're spending a little over $7,000 to run our own election. So there is a cost savings to us if we were to opt in and turn that over to the county and then just pay this annual assessment. As the city manager stated, there is some concern that there could be voter fatigue, as they call it, over a long ballot. I don't know if that applies. We are somewhat smaller. I mean, we're a large county, but the communities within our county are smaller. I think that we would probably have voter convenience centers, and so if these special hospital districts, a lot of that doesn't apply to us here in Raton, so our ballot probably wouldn't be impacted by some of those. I could see the school board, I'm not even sure what they call their board members, but they could be on the ballot. And then, of course, any bond questions that the school district or ourselves would have on the ballot. Certainly it would be less confusing to voters. I think over the years it's confusing because the schools have an election in February. Ours is in March, then you have the primary in June, and then the general election in November. So it would make it a lot easier for the voters knowing that, in the odd or even numbered years, which election we would be having in November. I think that there's a possibility it could increase voter turnout, which is something that we struggle with. We currently usually see about 20 to 25% voter turnout in our elections, which is fairly low, but this potentially could increase that turnout. I guess it could be a pro or a con, the shortening of a term or the lengthening of a term, so I guess that would depend on how you feel about that. One of the major changes that they made, the municipal election code has always been a separate statute, and so it was always under Chapter 3. That election code for municipalities has been repealed in its entirety. So we would now be following the same chapter that the county follows, which there's not a lot of drastic changes, but it would be something new that we would have to learn because we've always had our own election code. I think another major change, and this is actually a positive change that was made with respect to recall elections with a commission manager form of government. The new law now requires that the complaint be filed in district court, and so I think that was a positive change. The petition would not be circulated unless this complaint was upheld by the district court. So that's something that will impact us regardless of our decision. to continue with March elections or move to a November election. But those were pretty much the major changes that were made. Can you think of any other?
I would say that school board or municipal elections, they'll remain nonpartisan. So even though you're going to the November election and people see a primary that's a partisan election, that will not apply to school boards or municipalities. Will remain. We will not take place in the primary, and it's nonpartisan.
Michael, I thought there was, one of our league meetings, I thought there was discussion of possibly if the problem with the bonds and all of that making the ballot too large, that there could be something introduced this year to change that to where they wouldn't appear on the same ballot.
I didn't see anything about that. I know
maybe I was asleep, but
I guess our feeling here is that, in bigger communities, you may see tax issues or revenue bond issues, things like that commonly on the ballot. It's not that common in Raton, and I know for a municipal election, really looking back in time, maybe about once every 10 years. Now, I know we just had one on the last municipal election ballot, but I would say it's not typical that we would have those on our ballot, and that probably applies to school as well. Now, concern that some municipalities had expressed is you may have a financing issue on a special hospital district. That's not something that we would see in Raton. You do have one in Springer, so it may appear on their ballot. And there are other entities we mentioned, like an irrigation district or something like that. But the concerns that a lot of communities have, I know from my perspective, we really don't see that as being a big problem in Raton.
I think what you may be referring to is there is a provision for special elections, and they've stated that those cannot be for people but only for questions. So you could potentially have a special election for a question only, and all special elections would be a mail ballot.
Yes, that's what.
So I did read that provision in here. So I guess if we did want to hold a special election, it would have to be by mail ballot.
That's what it was.
So if we spend the $2,500 that it would cost to pay the county for our share of that, and then we've been spending around $7,000. Also, I'd like to know, how does that impact your workforce, your crew? Is it, would it free up your people and yourself from these extra duties and let them do it? That's what I'm leading up to.
We have a very limited staff, so when we do these elections every other year, we attend an election school in November. That's usually a 3 or 4 day training. And then generally we would start the election process late November, early December, and then our staff is dedicating their time to running this election probably through mid-March. So
And that would all go away, right?
So yeah, we would no longer kind of have to be juggling all these various duties. But yeah, so with a limited staff, I could see that could be.
Yeah, honestly, when the legislation was going over a couple of sessions, a lot of entities, but specifically municipalities, fought to maintain control of their election for different reasons. But I think from my perspective, and not speak for Michael Ann, but I think there could be some advantages to opting into the November election, and so we talked about savings of cost and really a time saving, one less significant task that our limited staff is now responsible for. We could kind of remove that responsibility, and I think we have a great working relationship with the county and the county clerk, and have all the faith in them being able to run these elections, which is mandated by the statute. But originally, you would not have the option of opting in. Everybody would have to go to the November election. This is an accommodation that the legislature made for municipalities only, but I don't know that we have really strong feelings. I think it's just the wishes of the commission at this point, but I certainly see some advantages to the opting into the November.
Yeah, like Mr. Berry stated, this is about the 4th iteration of this legislature. So,
Now, I did read in here that, if we did opt in, I mean, at some point, if we wanted to opt back out, there is a provision for that as well. So, I did talk to some of the larger municipalities when I attended the DFA budget conference a couple weeks ago, and so some of them, like Village of Ruidoso Downs, they're probably going to continue to do their own elections. But some of them are going to maybe kind of sit back and see how this first one goes. But like I said, most of the smaller ones and the ones in Colfax County, it's looking like they're all going to opt in. So in talking with the Colfax County clerk, Raton Trujillo is very supportive of our decision either way. She just wanted me to convey to the commission that she's there to support us, her and her staff, and that she's okay with whatever decision we make. But they are there to support us, and like the city manager said, I mean, they run numerous elections, not just every other year like we do, so they are trained and very capable to take this on.
Now, I guess what we're looking for from the commission is some direction about, proceeding with an ordinance. There's a timing element with that. We would have that prepared for the December 11th meeting if that's your direction.
I like the opting in. I think the pros far outweigh the cons, especially for a city our size. And I especially like that it frees up our workforce that are now wearing multiple hats and have even more demands on their time. In terms of shortening or lengthening the term, I think that's a really hard decision. I think either way there are pros and cons. I guess my only question with that is, if we did have something that we needed to go on the ballot sooner, if we had an increment or something that we were trying to do, if we lengthened, would we not be able to put it on for that much further time, or
no.
How does that work?
You could have a special election. I believe there's provisions that you couldn't have an election. There's like a 70-day window. So, I mean, we would have to be looking at the calendar that the county has for other elections to try to find a date that we could do a special election. But once again, it would be mail ballot only. So, now I think there would be additional costs associated with that.
Absolutely. Well, that's just, I think...
But I'm assuming they would be fairly minimal.
I think lengthening our terms for 21 months is quite a length, and although I'd be curious to hear what the public has to say about it. Honestly,
Personally, I prefer that we opt into it.
Same here. Well,
I really do.
Yeah, a penny saved is a penny earned, and let's go for that savings. Yeah. And that time.
Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do to opting in. Agree with Commissioner Chatterley that the lengthening or the shortening, it's going to be a tough decision. And I think it's the decision of...
We'll just cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I
the decision when we get there.
I don't know that we have to decide that tonight.
Right.
We just have, we can proceed along with an ordinance.
Right. Absolutely.
So I could certainly draft 2 ordinances for introduction at the next meeting, and we could decide which version we're going to introduce.
That sounds like a plan.
I mean, if that's the direction of the commission, is that we want to opt in.
I think it's...
If it's not, then we would just do a resolution.
Yeah, I think it's a unanimous consensus here that we would like to opt in, and then we can have discussion about the lengthening or the shortening as we approach the meeting.
I think that's all that's required here tonight, and we'll bring you a couple of options.
Okay.
All righty. Item E, deliberate and act on Resolution 66, revised Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, resolution of sponsorship. Mr. Barry?
Mayor Commission, if I could set up our Public Works Director, Jason Phillips, and preface his comments on this resolution briefly. Just in general, what we are doing here is seeking additional funding for the next phase of our Great Blocks project. So we talked about Great Blocks in previous meetings. We are shooting for having Phase 1 construction completed during December of 2018, really wrapping that up. With that said, we would have the landscape subcontractor come back in the spring and plant material and start up the irrigation system, something that we can't do in the cold months. So it would be to reach substantial completion with final completion to follow in the spring. But we do have quite a bit of work remaining in the second phase. We had looked at that, maybe possibly a third phase. So we have pursued funding through New Mexico Department of Transportation and their Transportation Alternatives program. So Mr. Phillips is ready to give you details on that. He has put a lot of effort into an application which we are ready to present to Northeast Regional Transportation Organization tomorrow, and final submission of our application for this funding. Mr. Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. You might recall when we approved the ICIP, we also approved Resolution 2018-54, and that was a TAP sponsorship of matching funds for a $600,000 application, and that was in advance of a preliminary deadline of October 31st. Since that deadline, our application has been submitted to the Department of Transportation and the Northeastern Regional Planning Transportation Organization, and a site visit was conducted about 2 weeks ago by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. Mr. Eric Garate and John Herrera came, and it was kind of a deep dive on your application, you know, to see if you're an eligible entity and to kind of grade the strength of your application. And the outcome of that was more positive than I can imagine. The only change that they thought we should make to our application was to ask for full funding of the available funds. We had kind of went with the $600,000 mark as, you know, trying to get phase 2 of 3, leave some money in the pot for other applications, but they thought that our application met all of the elements of TAP between the multimodal aspects of the project, the economic development aspects, and the pedestrian safety and ADA improvements. They called it a prototypical TAP application. So under that direction, we've prepared an application for $980,000, which is the subject of this resolution. And of that $980,000 application, we will be committing to 20% matching funds, which would be $196,000. TAP's minimum requirement is 14.85%. We're pledging 20% on the belief that it'll give us higher scoring preference for this application. It is a very competitive statewide application, and by being successful, we could essentially complete Great Blocks within FY 2021.
Jason, would there be a possibility of them just awarding X amount of this, or would it be all or none?
That's one of the first questions I asked, because I was worried about overreaching and losing potential smaller funds. They indicated that this committee is very flexible, that they've seen them reduce it down to available funds. They've seen them award more than asked for at times.
Cool.
So they've indicated that shouldn't be a concern for us. One thing that's nice about this, with the funding cycle being so far out, it's a 2-year program, TAP is. So in FY 2020, federal fiscal year 2020, we would be on the hook for 20% of $100,000. The next phase of it would be where most of our funds are, so we would have essentially 2 years to accrue gas tax funds to pay our matching.
Cool. All right.
And our match would come from the gas tax. We've talked about that before. The tax on fuel generates about $250,000 annually. As Jason said, we're really looking at 2 years of accrual, and we have funding right now. Now, we've spent some of that on projects, but Mayor and Commission, I would estimate we have more than $300,000 in our fund currently. So we can meet this obligation by your action on the resolution. You would be committing to those funds being available for the project if it's fully funded.
We also did make a correction on the resolution. There was a typo on the year. I think second paragraph, it said 2020. We did correct that, and then we also updated the signature lines with the mayor's name in mind. I didn't make you another copy of it, but we did make those changes.
If you approve the resolution tonight, Jason will actually submit this tonight with the application, and then we'll present this at the Northeast Regional Transportation meeting tomorrow. That's going to be held in Clayton at 10 o'clock.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 66, Revised Transportation Alternative Program TAP Resolution and Sponsorship.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-66. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Good job, yeah.
Yeah, very good. Item F, deliberate and act on bid award for transportation of solid waste roll-off containers. And since I see Mr. Phillips standing there, I'm assuming he's the man that's gonna
He's the
talk about it.
man, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor and Commission, what you have before you is a recommendation for award for solid waste transportation of roll-off containers. As you're aware, the bulk of our solid waste is collected by route trucks loaded in transport trailers and heads to Midway landfill in Colorado. But our transfer station operation has local drop-off and some bulky waste that we do use roll-offs for. We did receive one bid. There were some changes to the formatting of this contract that we'll discuss. The 150 loads at $240 per container. We used to kind of have a convoluted setup where we pay a contractor by the ton instead of by the shipment, and then we added a 10% markup to the tipping fees and a pass-through on tires and white goods and mattresses. This kind of cleans it up. It's essentially every time he takes a roll-off, we pay him the $240 plus tax, and then he will pass through an actual invoiced amount the cost of a tire, a white good, a mattress, and the tipping fees with no markup. Just a little cleaner way of doing it. Essentially, we're approving a $36,000 contract, knowing that the end result will be more along the lines of $65,000 to $70,000 a year in expenditures. But of that, most of it will end up being passed through. Mr. Arthur has had this contract since 2013, has performed amicably, and based on the pricing, what I could kind of extrapolate from previous years, it's probably $15 a load more than we had paid at the inception of this contract in 2013, which I think is a pretty fair escalator for 5 years later. So I would recommend approval of it.
Any questions for Mr. Phillips?
I'll move to approve the bid award for transportation of solid waste roll-off containers.
Second?
A motion and a second to approve the award for the solid waste, the roll-off contract. Any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Item G, deliberate and act on grant agreement between the City of Raton and NMDOT for fiscal year 2019 Police Department Traffic Safety Grants. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, in your package, you have a proposed grant agreement between, as offered by New Mexico Department of Transportation to the City of Raton, and then you see details on the grant. The award from the DOT to the City of Raton would cover funding for police operations that include end driving while impaired, the Buckle Up or the Click It or Ticket project, and then also selective traffic enforcement programs, a STEP program, and that includes 100 days and nights of summer. So the total funding offered to the city of Raton under this agreement is $8,187. And the term of this agreement would run through the end of September of 2019. Our local police department, upon your approval of the grant agreement, would set up these programs, which typically would involve a significant amount of overtime on the part of our department. So it would go towards funding primarily the manpower required for these programs here locally. These are programs that we have participated with NMDOT in the past, and successfully, I would say, in a continuation of these traffic safety programs.
Any questions for Mr. Barry?
I'll make a motion to approve the grant agreement between the City of Raton and New Mexico DOT for fiscal year 2019 Police Department Traffic Safety Grant.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the grant. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item H, deliberate and act on resolution 2018-67, November 2018 financial report. Mr. Barry?
Mayor and Commission, I am going to yield the floor to our city clerk in regard to this. I'll make one comment. When we're talking about our revenues, it's something that we have really kept a close eye on. And the last couple of months, we've noted that revenues have been lower than what we would expect for the time frame reflected in this. Now, we're not necessarily below budget on revenues, but we've taken the better part of the year, summertime, when we would expect to be well above budgeted revenues. We are really at budgeted revenues, and then it's not, the revenues are not linear month to month. We have stronger months in the summer, and we see lower months in the winter. So we would expect, with the trend 3 months in a row, that we are really lower, well lower than the same month a year ago or the same month in the past several years. We're well below those marks. We would guess that we'll see that we're below budget revenues in the next several months, the fall and winter months in town. And from the limited information that's made available to us, it looks like that we're seeing a lot of that is reflected under construction activities, but it's very general, not specific information. Of course, we know that losing a business like Kmart is going to reflect in this. We had anticipated that at budget time, talked extensively about that. Certainly contributes to this. I would say not wholly responsible for it, but it looks like there is a construction component to this. I'm not sure that it really makes sense to me that it continues on. Some of the other metrics that we've seen during the summer are the gas tax, the fuel tax, which is pretty strong. It's really higher than previous years. And then also lodger's tax, which is also strong. So limited data, it's not clear to me why this is happening, but we see something of a trend. 3 months in a row, we're below previous years.
Yeah, Tax and Rev is not very generous with their information.
So we have a concern there, Mayor, and when we talk about some of our big expenses like the hangar at the airport, we want to wait till later in the year and really see, what happens with the revenues. But we would expect in the future, where we're showing a little bit above our budget projections, we're going to see negative numbers in the revenue column of our budget projections. And the response to that is to try to control expenses. So we're doing that. We're talking with staff extensively about that. But there is a concern about that trend.
Michael, in?
Mayor and Commission, I noticed on the agenda I referred to this as the November financial report, but it is the October financial
Okay, you're right.
report. However, we do report to you on the November gross receipts tax distribution, so sometimes there's some confusion which month we're talking about. But I am presenting to you this evening a resolution to approve the October 31st, 2018 financial reports. So in your packet, you will see that as of October 31st, our available cash balance in the general fund is $1,734,882.88. And as the city manager reported, the November gross receipts tax distribution shows that we are just slightly above our budget projection year to date. So we hope that that trend doesn't continue, but as he said, you know, generally going into the winter months, we will start to see a decline in our gross receipts. And then also included in your packet, we do have the reconciliation so that you can see the ending cash balances for all of our funds. We are closing out some of these construction projects that we've had the last couple months. So we're working on the Hospital Drive closeout, and the Great Blocks will finish up here next month in December. And other than that, we won't have a lot of grant activity throughout the winter months. I am showing a negative cash balance in the recreation fund. We did do a budgeted transfer, which we do during the winter months when operations kind of taper off in the winter. So I did do a transfer to alleviate that negative cash balance. Other than that, is there any questions that anybody has on the report? If not, I would recommend approval of Resolution 2018-67.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2018-67.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2018-67, approval of the October 31, 2018 financial reports. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item J, City Manager's Report. Mr. Barry.
We have a budget
Did I-
adjustment.
One more.
Oh, mercy. Item I, deliberate and act on Resolution 2018-68, City of Raton Budget Adjustment Number 5. I just wanted to go eat, that's all.
Mayor and Commission, I've provided you with a revised budget resolution. In the general fund, we're just doing line item adjustments, so the net effect there would be 0. We do have some repairs that are going to be made to the Aquatic Center, so you'll see there's some repairs to the HVAC unit. We've estimated that just slightly under $2,500, but we are recommending a transfer from the quarter or the half-cent GRT to cover those expenses. And then also today we received a change order on the Great Blocks project, so I've revised the resolution to include those expenses associated with the Great Blocks project. And so we would be transferring a portion of that out of the Lodgers Tax Non-Promo Fund to cover the improvements that are being made in front of the Old Pass Gallery, which is a city facility, and then also the remainder would come out of our gas tax reserve funds to cover the backfill of the shaft near Patchwork Phoenix and engineering construction management costs. Is there any questions?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2018-68, City of Raton Budget Adjustment Number 5.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Resolution number 2018-68, Budget Adjustment Number 5 for fiscal year 19. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, item J, City Manager's Report.
It's kind of painless, wasn't it?
It was.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. I'll report to you that myself and staff have been working on update of the strategic plan, which you remember we had implemented earlier. We think that it's timely that we review the objectives of the strategic plan and begin to report back to the commission on modifications, revisions, or achievements that we've had towards meeting our goals in the strategic plan. So we're working with department heads, with our consultant Rita Shiplett. I would like to propose to the commission, and I talked to Rita today, we think it's timely that we would schedule a work session with the commission. That would include staff. It would include some of our community partners. The proposal is for your consideration, is that we would schedule that for December 17th. I know that that is shortly before Christmas, so we'll have to see if that can work with folks. We would look at an afternoon meeting from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. We would hold that at the convention center. That would be intended as a roundtable discussion, short presentations by our department heads that we are working on now, and then receiving your input as well as some comments from our community partners. So if you want to think about December 17th, that is a Monday afternoon. I know that we're going to talk about possibly scheduling some interviews of economic development proposals, and we had discussed December 11th for that to happen, but we have a meeting with Amtrak happening on December 11th, so I think we were going to reconsider that date. I don't know if there's an opportunity here to maybe do both things on the same day if we're all together, but I guess the question is your availability for either of those things. If you would like to see that, we would then issue that notice of quorum and make arrangements for either or both of those items. We would plan on then, following the first of the year, setting up a schedule where we would conduct the department head reports to the commission, something that we did a couple of years ago, and we think it's timely to update those reports to you. So we'll begin that in January or February and continue monthly till we cycle through all of the departments and those reports. We'll get back to the date. I'll continue on with the report and note to you that a contractor hired by New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund has been working on roof repairs. This is a result of the hailstorm that happened about 18 months ago. They had earlier completed 4 of our city buildings. Recently, they've completed re-roofing at the Schuler Theater and Fire Station Number 1, that's the Clark Street Station. Currently, that contractor is working on Housing Authority projects, as reported to you earlier. When they get done with some of those projects, we would anticipate that they'll begin roofing repairs at City Hall, a portion of the Aquatic Center building, and the RPS generation plant. So that will be going on. I would like to notify the commission of the Miners Day celebration. That is an event that has been set up by Miners Colfax Medical Center to be held on December 6th. 2018 at the convention center in the morning of December 6th, held from 9 a.m. to noon. I will prepare a presentation from the city of Raton and have asked Commissioner Chavez to read the proclamation at that event, and would like to invite all of the commission to attend. Again, we will have a notice of a quorum for that. This is a great event where we're going to talk about the importance of the miners clinic and the miners hospital and the services they offer to not only our local miners that have worked in the coal industry, but miners throughout New Mexico, as well as throughout the Rocky Mountain states. So we have a program here in which people affiliated with University of New Mexico, where MCMC has set up an endowed chair. We'll be present to talk about efforts they've made in advancing the art and the science of work on occupational conditions like pneumoconiosis, silicosis, black lung, and there's been a lot of advancement made by that program that's headed up by Dr. Sood at UNM over the last couple of years. So Dr. Sood will be present to talk about that. We would expect that Senator Udall or a representative of his office will be present, and we'll really work on all the advancements and the importance to Raton, as well as our local medical facilities that have taken place over the last couple of years. So if that will fit with your schedule, I think that'll be an excellent program.
Is that long-term care
Excuse me?
will that be held at long-term care or?
That will be held at the Raton Convention Center.
Convention
The
Center.
city is providing the convention center for this event. We really, MCMC and Dr. Sood have become known throughout the industry for its advancements in this program, so we would expect that people will travel from some distance to attend this event. So we'll get you some more information on that. I have been spending some of my time on several of our economic development projects. One of those is submission of a project idea to New Mexico Economic Development Department. There is an opportunity zone that is identified in the eastern part of Raton, and with that opportunity zone, New Mexico Economic Development has asked for our number one priority. The opportunity zone does allow some incentives for private investment within that zone. It's a fairly new opportunity there. We're still learning about that. I responded by identifying a project that I've worked with Raton Waterworks and our staff as far as establishment of an industrial campus on Armstrong Lane. So we're looking at really future development of Raton, both commercial development, industrial development, and residential development towards the east. And we would look at utility improvements that would make that possible, as well as locating some industrial activities along Armstrong Lane. So recently we had worked with Grow Raton on a project to bring a logistics center there. We were not successful in that one, but we would like to be prepared when those opportunities come along. So economic development will put that on their website. They'll have a web page for really every opportunity zone and the number one priority in each one. This will be the project that will be listed on the site for our local opportunity zone. So I've worked with Grow Raton and economic development on that, as well as some other projects that we hope to be reporting back to you on in the short future. Mayor, I would report that our Public Works Department and our Emergency Services Department attended a DOT coordinated meeting here locally, and that was to discuss wintertime activities and conditions relating to snow removal, street and highway conditions, and emergency response. So it's not a meeting that we've had in previous years, but it was a very productive meeting where county, city, and various state agencies sit down and discuss the response that we would have because we are expecting some snow this year. And there's a second condition that really prompted this, and that is construction activities on the interstate I-25 on the pass. And so what we've seen is, because of construction activities, traffic is really bottlenecked down to a single lane. You have some truck merging going on in that area of a single lane. Our emergency services have responded to a number of incidents on the pass because it's tough driving conditions, and it's conditions that maybe drivers are not expecting, especially the truck merging. We've seen lengthy delays. We saw that this weekend with traffic because of these bottleneck conditions. I know that the contractor is trying to get some paving accomplished where we're not so restricted up there, but with wintertime conditions, that's becoming more difficult to do. I'm sure that their work is going on this week and will continue to be going on, but we do expect to have issues through the winter with the interstate and with Raton Pass. And I think the consensus of that is the State Department of Public Safety and NMDOT will not hesitate to close I-25. If we have winter conditions, they will close I-25 very quickly, much more quickly than they have in past years. Because there are additional hazards and dangers up there currently. So we will have to deal with road closures. Of course, we can see, as we saw this weekend, a lot of traffic backing up, especially on a holiday weekend. So they will close the interstate at Las Vegas as well to try to keep some of that traffic down there where we're not overwhelmed with travelers here in Raton. But we can expect some of that in town, and this coordination meeting was excellent as far as getting all the parties together and talking about the communications part and who's going to be doing what. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mr. Berry?
I was wondering if we were going to do any, I have so many emails that keep getting shoved down further, but the possibility of the Game and Fish office closing, if we would write a letter on behalf of the city just for our support keeping it open. Didn't know if that was on our radar or not, or if the commission, anyone else?
Mayor, Commissioner Chatterley, I would say that we did have a meeting with Game and Fish official today on another issue. We talked about that. We talked about the possible time frame. I think that is the intent of somebody in the state of New Mexico to close the Raton office. There would be Game and Fish personnel still stationed in the area. But yes, I think we plan on a dedicated effort to let people in the state of New Mexico know that this is important to Raton. We don't see a good reason for closing the Raton office. That office should be in Raton. This is an important region for Department of Game and Fish, and they need that representation here. I will coordinate that with you, but we do plan on a strong response to that word.
Do you think this is something that could possibly change with the new administration?
It possibly could. Yes, I think that it would take, what we heard is it's not something that's going to be implemented soon, but possibly over, what I heard was in the next couple of years. So I think we've got time to work on it. I think we can talk to the new administration. And I think it's important that they are here. I think we really put a strong effort into making that known.
Seems like an odd office to close.
Yeah.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Berry? Then I'd go to item K, close the executive session pursuant to NMSA 10-5-1H6, certain purchases, review of RFPs for business and economic development services. I would entertain a motion.
I will move that we go into closed session.
Have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are in closed session.